idam
sarvam
sarvam
yat
yat
kincha
kincha
jagatyam
jagatyam
jagat
jagat
tena
tena
yaktena
yadena
munjitha
bhunjitha
ma gridaha kasya
kasya
sven
sven
dhanam
dhanam
ईशावास्यमिदां सर्वम्
ईशावास्यमिदं सर्वं
यात् किञ्च जगत्यां जगत्
यात्किञ्च जगत्यां जगत्
तेन तक्तेन भुञ्जीथा
तेन तक्तेन भुञ्जीथा
मा गदाः कसस्विद्धनाम्
मा गदाः कसस्विद्धनाम्
ईशावास्यमिदां सर्वम्
ईशावास्यमिदं सर्वं
यत्किञ्च जगत्यां जगत्
यात्किञ्च जगत्यां जगत्
तेन तक्तेन भुञ्जीथा
तेन तक्तेन भुञ्जीथा
मा गदाः कसस्विद्धनाम्
मा गदाः कसस्विद्धनाम्
ईशावास्यमिदां सर्वम्
ईशावास्यमिदं सर्वं
यात्किञ्च जगत्यां जगत्
यात्किञ्च जगत्यां जगत्
तेन तक्तेन भुञ्जीथा
तेन तक्तेन भुञ्जीथा
मा गदाः कसस्विद्धनाम्
मा गदाः कसस्विद्धनाम्
ॐ ज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुर्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूप कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वापदान्तिकम्। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवसदि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्ण
कृष्ण कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे।
In the verse that we discussed yesterday, it was established that the Lord is complete in all respects. And it was also stated that everything that we say is all coming from the Supreme Lord. In the verse that we are discussing today, it is being established that the Lord is the source of everything. He is the real proprietor. If we were to follow this verse, then all conflicts in the material world would at once come to an end. The Isopanisad is a part of the Yajur Veda. When Prabhupada came to your country for the first time in 1972, in his famous conversations with Dr. 𝐾𝐲𝐿, Prabhupada used this verse as the basis of his discussion. At least every Soviet devotee must know this verse by heart, because this verse establishes the philosophy of spiritual communism. We are also communists, but the real communists. In the Eastern European countries now, they have changed the names of their countries. You know that? Now they are calling themselves, like Hungary, Socialist Democratic. They're calling themselves socialists, not communists anymore. But we see no problem with the word communist, as long as it is based upon this verse of the Isopanisad. So this verse of the Isopanisad is saying that actually the Lord is the proprietor of everything. Normally we are thinking, all this wealth belongs to my country, and some people are thinking it belongs to my father. In the capitalist countries like America, they say everything belongs to private individuals, and in countries like yours, they say everything belongs to the state. But the Isopanisad says that both the theories are wrong. The theory of the Americans is wrong, and the theory of the communists is wrong. Because actually everything belongs to the Lord. That is a fact. How can you deny that the natural resources which are there have been put by God and nobody else? Do you think that there is any scientist or any scientific theory by which they can put oil under the earth, or they can produce the water that you find in the rivers and the oceans, or they can provide the other resources that Mother Nature is providing? Can the scientists today produce something like the fertile soil? That is, can the scientists with help of chemicals create a situation where you will put a seed, and out from that seed it will come this beautiful flower? So the answer is no, because actually this can only be done by God. So the theists, those who believe in God, they give all the credit to God. But the demons or the miscreants, they say there's no God, but it is nature. So we say, okay, it is nature, but who is controlling nature? Eventually nature also has to have a boss. You may see a policeman directing traffic on the road, but this does not mean that that policeman does not have a boss. Everyone has a boss, and nature also has a boss. Therefore Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Maya dakshena prakriti suyate sa characharam. This spiritual energy is working under my direction. So if we understand that everything is working under Krishna's direction, then naturally we want to use everything in service to Krishna. So the Isopanisad is establishing who is the real proprietor, because once you understand who is the real proprietor, then you will understand that everything belongs to God. Prabhupada once gave an example. He said, suppose you have 100 ruble note, and that 100 ruble note is on the street. Now there are three possibilities. One is, one man can let the note lie over there. Another possibility is, the man will pick up the bill and put it in his pocket. And the third possibility is, he will see the note, he will say, oh, let me find out who is the proprietor, and then take the money to the proprietor. So, of the three possibilities, the most perfect is that individual who picks up the note and gives it to the proprietor. So similarly, the devotee is one who understands that everything belongs to the Lord, and hence everything should be used in service to the Lord. The Lord has many energies, especially the superior and the inferior energies. In the 7th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, there is a description of the para and apara prakritis of the Lord. The para prakriti means the living entity who belongs to the superior energy. And earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, false ego, these all belong to the inferior nature or the apara prakriti. So everything that you see in the material world, it either belongs to the para prakriti or it belongs to the apara prakriti. Nothing is independent of one of the two prakritis. Even this microphone, for example, this microphone that you see, this of course is what? It's made from plastic or metal. But even plastic, it is nothing but a combination of different chemicals that are being provided by the Lord. So it doesn't matter what you see, everything is actually coming from the Supreme Lord. The scientists have just succeeded in manipulating the resources given by God. So we must understand the position of Bhoga. And if we approach the Supreme Lord according to His instructions, then we can achieve the goal of life. We must understand that nobody is a proprietor of anything. You know, next to our Bombay temple, there's a beach, a very famous beach called Juhu Beach. You must have seen many pictures of Prabhupada on the morning walk on Juhu Beach. So on the Juhu Beach, we see that sometimes when we go on a walk, many children go there and they make with the sand castles. They imagine, oh, I'm going to build such a nice castle, I'm going to live in this nice palace. And another man comes, he sees that beautiful castle made of sand, he puts his leg on it and the whole castle is broken. So similarly, I may have a lot of money in my bank, I may have many big buildings and cars, but cruel death will come and stamp and take everything away. The rich man is always telling the doctor, please extend my life, please extend my life. But the doctor cannot even extend his own life. How can he extend your life? Nobody wants to give up his possessions. If I make a very big house, of course in your country we see that most people have same type of houses, but in many other countries, these so-called rich people, they make palaces for themselves. So, if you get attached to your house, then again you have to take your birth in that house only. But you will not take your birth as the owner of that house. Take your birth in the same house as a mosquito or a bug or an insect. So you're still living in that house, but you're living as an insect and not as a proprietor. So Prabhupada used to give one nice story. It's a true story. So once there was a very rich man and he had built a very nice house. He was very attached to that house. But ultimately he had to die. And he died just thinking about that house. So in his next life, he took his birth as a cobbler. But as a cobbler, he was working right in front of the house which he had built in his previous life. And in that house, of course, now his sons were living. So one day, this rich man who had now become a cobbler went inside the house with some shoes. And those who were his sons in his previous life, they beat him up so badly. They said, "You poor man, you can't come into my palace." And they beat him up so badly that he went out crying. So, you may build a very nice house, you may get very attached to it, but then you will have the reaction also. So the summary is that we must recognize that everything belongs to the Supreme Lord. Now, Krishna further says, because everything belongs to the Lord and it doesn't belong to you, you must only accept as much as necessary for your survival, not more than that. This is known as the principle of simple living and high thinking. You live very simply and you think highly. Think about the goal of life. Today what people are doing, they will live very high and think very simply. This is material philosophy. That is high living and simple thinking. People will borrow money, steal, do anything, but they must have a so-called high standard of living. So, spiritual philosophy, as we said, is we live very simply. Why? Because we understand that life is very rare and we must use this life to understand our relationship with God. So Krishna is saying over here that one should only accept what is in his quota, not more than that. Because if you try to accept more than that, then you will have to just over-endeavor and there will be no time for spiritual life. So, if you understand that everything belongs to God, if you understand that everything has to be used in service to the Lord, if you understand that nothing is mine, then naturally you will take a more humble profile. Today if you go to the so-called rich people, they have no time to talk to you about God. Even if you go to a country like India, the so-called rich people, they have no time for devotees of Krishna. They have time to go to the clubs, to the bars and everywhere, but no time for Krishna. Therefore in the Srimad Bhagavatam it is said that if you have too much wealth, it becomes your enemy to spiritual life. That is why I say the people of your country are the most fortunate people on this planet. They do not have the poverty of India and they do not have the opulence of the West. They are in between. Just the perfect position to approach God. Because you will see that as people get too much money, they have no time for bhoga. Then they turn away from bhoga. So, for a devotee, it is better to desire to be poor. This way he'll be dependent upon Krishna. He will not get puffed up and he will always have to work for Krishna. Just like, our whole ISKCON movement all over the world, even though it is so big, but Krishna hasn't given us one extra kopic. If our devotees don't go out and preach every day in the West, the next day there will be no prasad. Even though in America there is so much wealth, every house has 3-4 cars, but our ISKCON temples are all hand to mouth, they're all broke. And he always wants his devotees to struggle for him by thinking of him. So, a devotee of the Lord, he's always struggling for Krishna and he's never discouraged by the struggle. Once Prabhupada was coming down the lift in a building in the New York temple and the devotees were telling Prabhupada, you're very old, now you need rest, you're not well, please go and take rest in Gita Nagari. But Prabhupada said, please, don't take away my privilege to struggle for Krishna. So to struggle for Krishna is a great virtue. Arjuna had to struggle for Krishna. He had to fight the battle even though he did not want to fight. So to struggle for Krishna is not an unusual event. And the devotee, he recognizes that by struggling for Krishna, I will get a chance to remember Krishna even more. So Krishna is telling us in this verse that there will be absolutely no conflict on this planet if everybody took as much as he needs for his survival. But the problem today is everybody wants more than his quota. Prabhupada used to give an example that suppose you were to take a bag of grains and throw it out on the road, and if you told the animals, come and take as much as you want, the animals would come and take as much as they can put in their mouth. But if you were to call the human beings and tell them, take as much as you want, they will take as much as they can for as much as they can carry. So similarly, because of our greed, we want to take as much as we can. Now the Muni very clearly says, a hungry man can be satisfied when you give him food. A thirsty man can be satisfied when you give him water. A greedy man can be satisfied when he shouts at you. But a greedy man can never be satisfied. I'm sure there are greedy men even in your country. There are greedy men everywhere in society. So we have to give up greed. But you can only give up greed if you understand this verse of the Sri Isopanisad. Because this verse is clearly saying that you can only accept as much as you need for your survival, not more. And if your philosophy is simple living and high thinking, then there's no question of having any burden. So Isopanisad is saying, just take as much as it is set aside for your quota, not more than your quota. If you take more than your quota, then the Lord will not be pleased. Like for example, these days we see that so many developed countries of the world, especially America, Argentina, Australia, so on, they will take their grains, dump it in the sea, but they will not sell it to any other country. They will dump millions of tons of grains every year, but they will not sell it in the market because they are scared that the prices will go down if there's too much in the market. So this is very tragic. Instead of understanding that all these grains belong to the Lord, so let me use it for the Lord, we are thinking, this belongs to me, I must make maximum profit. So if I have too much in the market, people will not buy. So I will just dump it in the sea so I can get more prices. So Isopanisad is telling us that we should only accept what is the quota assigned to us. And one must know that everything belongs to the Lord. And since everything belongs to the Lord, everything should be used in His service. And if we accept everything as everything with this mentality, then we will be rightly situated. So we have to come to this understanding. It is not easy to come to this understanding. Even though we are sitting over here, we may say, oh, this is so easy, what is difficult in it? But once you start to do it, you will know how difficult it is. And the spirit of renunciation that is being advocated can be developed if you have the association of sadhus. So the Isopanisad is saying that as soon as one is born, he is born with his quota of happiness and distress. And because we are born with a quota of distress and happiness, we are all going to get our quota of unhappiness and a quota of happiness. If we want to take something that doesn't belong to us, then you will become liable for the reaction. So similarly in spiritual life, you must know that everything belongs to the Lord and the spiritual master, and therefore everything should always be offered to the Lord. And if we believe in simple living and high thinking, then we will be able to practice this verse, and then by practicing this verse, we will be able to make spiritual advancement. And this is what the Isopanisad is educating us as to who we are. And if we understand who we are, then it is easy to serve Krishna. But if we don't know who we are, then to serve the Lord is impossible. So this verse is very significant. Prabhupada used to quote this verse very often to point out how everything belongs to the Lord. And this verse is explaining how everything belongs to the Lord. And the devotee understands that everything belongs to the Lord and works for the glorification of the Supreme Lord with this understanding. In material society, everybody is fighting. The capitalists are saying their system is better, the socialists are saying their system is better. But we say that only Krishna's system is better. If we follow Krishna's system, then we will never go wrong. So, Krishna's system is there in the Sri Isopanisad. You recognize that everything belongs to the Lord, and you only take as much as you need for your survival, and then you'll be able to be successful. So whether you have a beautiful building, which is made of earth, water, fire, air, ether, or whether you have a big factory, everything is coming from the Supreme Lord. Therefore, He must be the real proprietor. Prabhupada used to give one example of the Red Indians in America. Do you understand what I mean by Red Indians? So, before the European immigrants went to America, the land of America was under the control of the Red Indians. But then they were replaced by the Native Americans. So the point is that things are always changing. At one time the land of America belonged to the Native Indians, and then the land belonged to the Americans. And now tomorrow it may change again. But this is but mundane law, material law. Today I am the proprietor, tomorrow you will be the proprietor. Therefore the devotees do not identify with a changing material environment situation. By understanding that everything belongs to the Lord and using everything in service to the Lord, one becomes perfect. So the Isopanisad very nicely explains to us how Kṛṣna is the proprietor of everything and how everything should be used in service to Kṛṣna. And if we serve everything in the service of Kṛṣna, then you advance towards the real goal of life. Goal of life is what? To develop Kṛṣna Prema. So with this we will stop the discussion of this verse and now take on questions. I thought we've discussed this verse for more than 1 hour. So now with this background, if you all have any questions, please present your question and we will try our best to remove your doubts. Just like in the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna is always asking questions to get his doubts removed. So we all have doubts, not 1 or 2, but hundreds, thousands, millions.
Yesterday, one devotee, Valeri, he wanted to make it more clear. He asked you about when a person comes to Krishna consciousness, for example, he gets acquainted with Krishna consciousness movement. Is it the sequence of his karma, or maybe it is like supreme will or his own will? Can you elaborate a little
Combination of the two. When you come to Krishna consciousness, you come due to your past karma and due to the mercy of the sadhus. How do you think? You think it's just by accident that all of a sudden so many Soviet devotees are taking to the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra? It is not by accident. It is a continuation of the karma of your previous life. And if the previous karma is strong, then some or the other you will come to Krishna consciousness. And doesn't matter how strong your karma may be, if you approach Krishna, Krishna is always ready to accept you. So karma definitely has some influence, but if you want to surrender to Krishna, then all that so-called karma is nullified.
Well, is it proper when devotees present to each other various presents to each other? Is it good for devotional service?
Yes, there's no harm. Rupa Goswami talks about 6 types of loving rasas amongst devotees. One of them is to reveal your mind, then is to take instructions from those who are more advanced. One is to offer gifts in charity. Give in charity and accept in charity. But you also give to each other Vaishnava gifts. You don't give some devotee a tape of the latest Michael Jackson tapes. You give him devotional paraphernalia. Like in India, many people come and give biscuit boxes to our pujaris. These foolish people do not know that we don't offer biscuits to Krishna. You can even have eggs in the biscuit. So the point is that if you want to offer to some other Vaishnava some gift, offer some gift that is Krishna conscious.
Well, you said that the highest goal of life is the achievement of Krishna Prema, but we often judge the person according to his practical results, his practical achievements. What is your opinion? How can you elaborate?
Having Krishna Prema doesn't mean that you think that now my results are impractical. If somebody is cultivating Krishna Prema, then he'll be anxious to serve Krishna all the time. But if he is not trying to cultivate Krishna Prema, then it's another thing. So, one who's trying to develop Krishna Prema, he loves everyone, and he does everything in service to the Lord. And if we follow this process of devotional service, then there will be the development of Krishna Prema.
Well, our body belongs to Krishna, and so is it possible that in some cases we sacrifice our body, our life to the Lord?
It belongs to Krishna, that means you use it in service to Krishna. It doesn't mean that you commit suicide and say, I'm offering this body to Krishna. Just like in Buddhists it is very common that if they want to protest something, they just pour oil and burn their body. They commit suicide. We do not harm this body. We have no right to harm this body. If this body does not belong to you, how can you harm it? There is a very nice story in Chaitanya Charitamrita on this point. Sanatana Goswami was suffering from a disease by which pus, boils were coming all over his body. So Sanatana Goswami was going to Jagannath Puri to see Lord Jagannath, or to see Lord Chaitanya. On the way he was passing through the forest of Jharikhanda, and this disease of his became very, very serious. So Sanatana Goswami was thinking, when I go to Jagannath Puri, I will see the Rath Yatra cart, and in front of the Rath Yatra cart I will...
𝐾𝐲𝐬𝐭𝐫𝐚𝐜 said.
But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, because he is a Lord in everyone's heart, he knew what was Sanatana Goswami's desire. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, this body does not belong to you. This body belongs to me. And I will use your body to establish places of pilgrimage. And to spread the laws of dharma. So this body belongs to Kṛṣna, and we have to use this body as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu told Sanatana Goswami. This means that you must take care of this body properly. No artificial renunciation. If the body needs 6 hours of sleep, give it 6 hours of sleep. Don't think you're such an advanced yogi you can live without sleeping and eating. If we have regulated hours of eating and sleeping, then your body will be very healthy. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare